So, hi everybody. This is Lucy. I'm the dating coach and matchmaker. And as you know, I have a very special guest tonight with me. I have Anne Bernard, who is a master of the first times and an author of How to Become a First Time Storyteller. Hi, Anne. How are you doing?
Hi, Lucy. Congratulations on your first live on Facebook with a guest. Yay. We always want to celebrate first times.
That's true. Always celebrate the first times. They're very important because they create a beautiful stories. So, Anne, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and a little bit more about your stories.
So I do go by the master of first times. So my world revolves around first times and new experiences, past, present, and future. A little bit of my background. I spent 24 years in the Marine Corps, 16 of those on active duty, a little mixed time. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been to over 40 countries. So I love traveling, exploring, and having new experiences. And so for the last 8 years, I've been on this journey of first time and new experiences. And I decided to create an app that helps people make a list of things that they've never done in order to maximize what they get out of life. So it's not about bucket lists. It's about today. What can I do today to grow, to learn, to, discover more about yourself? And there's many other benefits. And then COVID hit. So I was already doing a podcast and I was sharing my first time stories. And then when COVID hit, I started the first time storytelling broadcast. And through that broadcast, I realized people are not really good storytellers. So I ended up creating a course, writing a book, and really exploring, how to become a storyteller. And I have first time in parentheses. And the reason why, obviously, first times, because my world revolves around first times, but it's first times because we are the sum of all of our experiences, and everything started with a first time. So you can run a thread through your entire life with just your first times. So it's a great place to start your stories in order to communicate and express who you are. So that's what I do now. I teach people how to become first time storytellers.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so we are streaming right now in a singles in a Bay Area. And I know how important the stories as a dating coach and matchmaker, stories are a big part of dating and big of connecting with people and how to express yourself for people to enjoy you and get to know you. So tell us a little bit about what is storytelling about? Tell us more.
So it is absolutely about communicating who you are through stories.
Mhm.
So I can ask a question and say, "Hey, Lucy, what was your first car?" And then you can answer that with the make and model and the year that you got it, and maybe, how you were able to afford it. And that's going to give a little bit of information. But if you tell a story of getting your first car, then you can really paint this background, which includes the situation, what your childhood was like, what your teenage years were like around the time when you got your first car. And it could be tied to your first job. Your first car is tied to a lot of different things. So now if you tell a story, you're providing a great deal more information, and it's a lot more engaging and entertaining, so that if you're on a date, you're not playing 20 question, you don't feel like you're in an interview, because you answer questions with stories. And that's an opportunity to really draw somebody in and for them to get to understand you.
Mhm.
And I have a saying, when someone walks away from having a conversation with me, I don't want them to have an opinion of who I am. So, an opinion of someone is based on what you decide about the person. I want somebody to understand who I am. So it has nothing to do with what you think of me or your opinion of me, but because I told you the right stories, I engage with you, I brought you into my life, I allowed myself to be open and vulnerable, then you really get to know who I am. And obviously, in dating, you that's the whole point of why you're on a date is to get to know the other person. So if you're on a date and the person is, not communicating who they are with you, then that's when you're like, I've got to go. 'Cause we're not, you know, you have to open up. You have to make yourself vulnerable. And when you tell stories, it allows you to do that, but it's almost doing so kind of a protected fashion.
Mhm.
So I became like this extreme storyteller because I was traveling around the world. I was doing Airbnb, staying with strangers, and then I went on like over 100 dates in like a summer. And it became kind of a game for me. It's just like, "Ooh, how many stories can I tell? How much information can I drop?" And but what I wanted out of my dates is I'm telling you a story. I want a story from you. And I realize people don't know how to communicate that way. And the dates got really boring. So I stopped doing no more dinner dates, no more lunch, coffee, drinks. It's like, let's go out and let's do things because talking just gets too boring. And
Mhm.
I know if you're listening and you've been out there and you've been dating, and during COVID, where you can't meet in person, and if you're doing video dates, especially, you have to be able to have really engaging conversations. And that's done with storytelling.
That's very true. It's very true. I do have many clients who are coming with, for my coaching, and they said, how do I connect with people? How do I show them my real myself? And
Mm.
it really does come to communication and opening up and sharing your vulnerable yourself and sharing a little bit more about yourself. It's very important. And sometimes, I don't know why, sometimes people do have this barrier that they don't want to share it. They feel intimidated that, or there is a certain block that they won't communicate the story right. So is there anything that you would maybe advise for people who are having like this little block, how to share, how to open up? Is there anything that you would suggest for them to feel more comfortable to share themselves on a date?
So, hands down, that's why I love storytelling because it's much easier. You can make a story very rich with a lot of information, and only people who are really listening to you and who really care what you have to say is going to understand and pick up all that information. So, that in itself will let you know this is someone worth interacting with. It might not be somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with, but you realize this is somebody that I enjoy interacting with. When we are heard, when someone listens to us, they understand what we have to say, they're engaged with what we have to say, that allows us to open up more.
Mhm.
And you need to understand that to really make a connection, the only way that you make the connection is that you allow yourself to open up and be vulnerable. So
Mhm.
if you prepare what stories that you're going to share, you know what you're communicating in those stories, and the way that you express vulnerability, that you open up, is that you share your feelings. So you can tell a story where you experience, loss or something. I mean, obviously, it's not the story you want to open up with, but if you get, if you get at a point in the story, in the evening where you want to open up more, you can choose the story of losing your first pet, and there's going to be a lot of vulnerability in that story because that's like losing a family member. And and the person is going to feel your pain. They're going to feel what it was like for you, and they're probably going to relate to that because a lot of people have lost a pet. And so you can start the story with your first pet and then develop it into, how long you had the pet. And then, I mean, trust me, like that kind of story, somebody's going to hang on to every word. They're going to relate to it. They're going to want to share, their experience with it. But you can, choose different stories like that So the other thing that happens is that we forget a lot of our experiences. This, like, I teach people to create a first time story repertoire. So you have a like 30, 50 stories that have themes, that have subjects that you are ready to, share, to weave into conversations. And when you do that and they've been rehearsed and you're comfortable with them, it makes it easier to open up. For that, the person you're sharing with, it's the first time they're hearing it. It could be your 15th time sharing it, but now, you're used to it, and that makes your ability to be vulnerable and open about it much easier. So it comes with that practice, and it's not about being rehearsed, it's not about being manipulative. It's about knowing your life, knowing who you are, and knowing how to express that to someone.
Mhm.
And there's just such tremendous value in being able to do that and rapidly connecting with people and getting conversations going, and maintaining some really amazing deep conversation. And we all know what happens. You can be with someone where time is dragging on and you're hurting because it's boring, it's not happening.
Mhm.
Or time can fly by and the conversation is just moving and it's deep, and we know that the latter is what, like, makes us feel so good. So it's training yourself so that you create the latter experience with just about anybody that you meet, because you are willing, you're able, and you are trained to open up. And that's knowing who you are, having the self-awareness, understanding your own thoughts, your own feelings and emotions from the things that have happened to you, that have impacted and shaped you.
Mhm. That's very beautiful. And I know you actually on your own went through some of the process of growing the connections with people, because I read beginning of your book. I haven't chance to read it all yet. I'm working on it. It's a beautiful book. But in the beginning, you were sharing this journey where you said, I didn't know how to connect with people. You had this moment where you realized, I don't know what to do. And I know so many people in the group or singles, they do have a feeling that they don't know how to connect. So what will be your advice for them to start and do it? What will be kind of the push?
It's definitely having the desire. So for me, I was in my late 30s. I'm 43 now. I was in my late 30s, and I know, we we become so focused with our careers, with our goals, with our ambitions, and it can become very easy to be just too focused, and then you ignore your relationships, you ignore your friendships. This is just not in a dating situation, but in your, like, life situation. And for me, it was my entire life. I didn't have close friends. Like, I mean, I joined the Marine Corps, and Marines, like, you become friends. Like, the people you work with, you encounter, you become friends because you have that common, you know, theme, or commonality of being Marines. And because we all, like, every 3 years, we all travel somewhere else. Like, there's no expectation that you're going to keep up with each other. It's just, you might not see each other for years. You catch back up on base and you keep going. So I got away with ever needing to, you know, build relationships. And I realized I was in a park in Prague, and that's where I had the realization I wanted to help another human being, and I was frozen. I
Mhm.
did not know how. And that's when I went on a 2 year, on purpose journey of connecting with strangers so that I could develop the skills. So understand that it is a skill. So one of the things I talk about in the book, you'll get to that, right? I talk about the different type of personalities, and the type that you might be when it comes to opening up and being vulnerable. And then depending what type you are, what actions to take to develop that desire of wanting to connect. And once you start experiencing deep connections, then it becomes easier because you want more of it, and then you realize you want that with quality people. So developing the skills, the desire, it really helps you learn, like, okay, this person is very superficial, I don't enjoy my interaction with them, so I'm going to limit my interaction with them. And I think COVID has forced some of that, right, to where you've realized some people, yeah, when you're together, but during COVID, you have not reached out to them because it was not a rich connection that was fueling, what you needed. And hopefully having those rich connection, growing closer to the people that mean the most to you, will also minimize the drama that you have in your life. And again, the type of people that you bring in your life. And then that increases your why, like that this matters and you want to continue to improve. And then you want the people in your life to also elevate the way that they communicate so that it's even more entertaining and engaging when you do, converse together.
Mhm. I have to say everything you said, it's super amazing, great advice for our listeners. And I have to say that, reading your story, I was able to connect it on multiple levels because first of all, the story was from my town, from Prague.
I didn't know you're from Prague.
Yes.
Yay.
So it really, I started reading it like, oh my, what she has to say about Prague. And so
Great place.
you got me right there. And, for people who are on a date, if you find something that connects both of you, you all of a have an instant connection. And that what makes beautiful, the stories are beautiful connector between you two, that you can create. So a beautiful story. I would recommend everybody to read the story. By the way, the link for Anne's book is in the group, but I will post it again under this video. And also, Anne has a coaching program. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it and what is it about for the storytelling?
Absolutely. So once Lucy has you matched up and you're going to be going on your date and you want to learn how to tell your stories, so you get the book, read the book, and there's also a course. Let's say you just do the book, and then I offer first time story coaching. So you're like, that's a new thing. So, because I teach you in the book all the components to your stories and how to outline them. So the components are, you need to consider yourself as a character. So it's how to, it's, to some extent, it's similar to, if you're going to write a book and you need to develop your character, you need to develop your setting, your plot, and your theme. It's similar to that, except it's the twist of your story. So you're the character. It's a setting from your life, and that's the other reason why first time story is so powerful, because you don't have to make it up. You don't have to. Okay, you will have to try and remember. Again, trust me when I say this, it can be a little rough sometimes. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I want to tell the story. And you're like, and then you try to outline and you're like, I don't, I don't remember. Like, so you might have to get in touch with your family. You might have to look up some pictures. You might be like, how old was I? Where did we live at the time? What was happening? And this is why it's so powerful, because you're going to reconnect with your own life, and that will, increase your well-being, your self-awareness, and the other benefits. But the coaching is, once you have your outline, I don't want you to write your stories unless you're going to do this in order to publish your stories on a blog or something like that, because they're verbal, right? They're verbal stories. If you write them, then you're going to rehearse what you wrote, and that will take the magic of reliving the story to really draw somebody in. So the coaching is, it's a Zoom call like this, and you share the story, and the coach gives you feedback on the story, right? How is the content? Did they have enough background story to understand what your story was about? Did you properly, explain who you were as the character? Was your story properly paced, right? So you can have too much information in the stories and it slows down the pace. So then the person, stops paying attention because it's not interesting anymore. So the coach, works with you. They hear your story, they provide you feedback and input on the story. Then you get a recording so you can listen to the story. You can obviously listen to get all the feedback from the coach, and then improve your story, and then go out there and continue to take it for test drives, with different people. And if you're out dating, and this is fabulous because you can have a handful of stories that you share with your dates, see the type of reaction that you get, the type of impact. you know you want to stay true to your story, so you don't want to
Mhm.
lie, you don't want to make things up, right? So if a story's not interesting enough, then find another story to tell that communicates similar information of things that happen in your life. So that's what the coaching is all about, is to help you apply what you learn and improve and develop that skill, because it truly is a skill. I had over 120 guests on the first time storytelling broadcast, and maybe 75%, no, maybe 25% of them were storyteller. 75% of them just shared information, but not in a storytelling format. And it's such a difference. I mean, you know this, it's like when somebody tells you a story, it creates emotions that like you said, like if they, and that's part of that I teach. You want to have if the person, you want something that they're going to connect with. You want a familiarity factor that they're going to connect with. So if I'm talking to somebody that's in the military and I'm telling a story, I will weave in something about the military, because
Mhm.
they'll connect to that and then they'll want to pay more attention to it. So that's the type of stuff with the coaching that, and the book, that you learn about, like all the little finer details that can really make you a pro at storytelling.
Thank you. That's really beautiful. And for everybody who is interested in this coaching, I'm going to put the link below this video and you can connect with Anne. But I also have a question here from John. And John is asking if you can share a story, like a camping trips, if you have any from your camping.
From my camp. Okay, so a couple of years ago, I drove across Canada. I was born in Edmonton, and I was just a few weeks old. We went back to Quebec, to St. George in the province of Quebec in Canada. So I had crossed the US half a dozen times. I had never crossed the homeland, Canada. So I decided one summer, I'm going to cross Canada and I'm going to camp, I'm going to mountain bike, I'm going to hike, and it was a really epic trip. So I get to my first campsite, and I had bought this really expensive coffee maker for like the campfire. So I was like, oh, I've never made a campfire. So I was like, okay. And then because it was like in a national park, you couldn't bring your wood in, so you have to buy their wood. So I bought their wood, and all I had was matches, and I'm thinking it can't be that hard to start a fire. Like, I know you have to get the kindle going, and then once you have the kindle, you slowly build it out, and you're good to go. So I went out in the woods, and I'm like, okay, it has to be dry, and so I get that, and I am trying to start this fire, and it's just smoke. And I'm like, this is not working out. So I'm trying and I'm trying, and it's just smoke. And then I'm like, you know what? It's not true. When there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes there's just a lot of smoke. So I get in my tent, and I had my dog. My dog, little man, has traveled the world with me, so it's his first night camping. The mosquitoes are going after him, and I'm like, I don't know what this is going to be like. He wants to get back in the car. So we sleep in the tent. In the morning, I get up and I'm like, I'm going to try this again. So I try to start a fire again, and it's not working. And I'm looking at my coffee pot, my percolator, and I'm like, I just want coffee. And I think it was like $50. I was like, and so I went for a walk, and there was, the ranger station, and I went in there and they had coffee that they were selling for like a really like a little 8-ounce cup. It was like 250. And I'm like, gotta be kidding me. So I bought your wood, I paid for this, and then I had to pay $250 to get coffee that morning. And then so later that day, I went to a store and I got, the gas. I got everything to start a fire. So the next time at the next camp ground that I stopped at, I was like, I got this, and I got my fire. So that's my first campfire story, which was not successful.
Well, congratulations. Well, it was successful. You made it. You made it at the end. The
Yeah,
fire.
well, yeah, but yeah, the first time I learned, though it's not easy to start a fire. Like, and it made me wonder how houses just blow up in flames, because every time after that I did a campfire, it took a lot of gas. It took a lot of the
Well,
lightning fluid.
you have a beautiful story. That's for sure. Out of
Yeah.
out of the
I also encountered my first black bear. It was a like I said, it was an epic trip. Lots of camping. It was an incredible, and lots of firsts.
lot of
And Canada is a beautiful country.
yeah. It's always good to celebrate the first, because that's
Yeah.
what makes the story beautiful. And a lot of people can relate it to first stories. Um, and so there's a question. Let me read this.
We gotta get
Um,
Lucy to share a story.
uh, so if you're already texting with someone and both already know a few details about each other, like work, what pets you have, what hobbies, what would be the good breaker for when they meet? What would you suggest, like the first story to share on a
To
first?
share.
Mhm.
So you already have some basic information. So it depends what you want to know about the person, right? So do you want to know more information about their childhood, the way that they were raised? So I think there's a lot of information to be gained from that information, because how did you, so you can do like your first job, your first heartbreak, or your first kiss, your first love, because that will develop into asking other question, right? So their first experience, what it was like. So maybe like their first job. So, did they have good work ethics? Did they get fired? Or, where, again, it depends what information you want to know about the person. And so that's where you decide which first time story to like prompts to use to get stories out of them. And then what information do you want to share? So a great way to start a conversation is to ask them a question you want them to ask you.
Mhm.
Right. So you have your story ready, you ask them the question, they answer it. If they're a decent human being, they're going to volley the question back to you. If they don't, then I hope you all already know, if somebody doesn't ask you the question back, it doesn't mean you can't answer the question. I know it's frustrating when somebody doesn't have the decency to say, oh, what about you? But if they don't, you can say, well, here's my experience or whatever. So then you get to share your story.
Mhm.
But I add a little addition to that. When you tell a story, you want to pay attention to how the person also listens, because that in what they're learning and what they're picking up. Because, if you want a partner that is going to learn about you, care about you, and really be there for you, it means that they listen to you. So if you share a story and the person is not listening, they're not picking up, they're not asking, like follow on questions, that's, this, Lucy, right? That's a little bit of a note to self. Let's try another question and see what happens with that. and then you have the information that you have. Um, so what it sounds like based on the texting, you have like basic data, right? So it's now you want to dig deeper. You
Mm.
want to get to the conversation that's going to get the person to open up and see if that they can be vulnerable with things that have happened to them and how that made them feel, what they thought about it, because that's when you get to know who someone is. When you get to know in a situation, I felt this way, the reason why I felt this way is whatever it is. That is when you get to know someone. It's not facts and information about their lives, but it's how they felt, how it impacted them, how it shaped them, what lesson, what value they gained from that. That's the information that you're really after to know if someone is worth like having in your life and really sharing who you are and moving forward with it.
That's beautiful. 100% agree with what you said. And, I would like to add to it something. You already know little pieces about a person. I would say pick something that connects you. Maybe it's the pet you were talking about, and go deeper, as you said, or hobbies. Always, going deeper. And if you cannot find a topic that connects you, I think there's so many beautiful topics that connects us on so many levels. Maybe childhood, we all experience childhood, and maybe we have my childhood is different from yours, and I think that's a beautiful bonding and experience about how you grow up, and what mischiefs did you get into as a kid. I can tell you so many, as I was a very mischievous girl, but that's beautiful how people can connect with those stories
Yeah.
that
But
go ahead.
I will add, that's the beauty of first time stories. So one of the things, if you get the book, there's 80 first time story prompts in there, right? Because if I'm having you build a repertoire of 30, 50 stories, I'm giving you prompts, plus there's so many more. There's hundreds of first time stories that you can tell, and then some. But the beauty of a first time story, to add to what Lucy is saying, is that it's a common human experience. So now if you get into, if I tell you the story of the first time I went skydiving, paragliding, canyoning, okay, you might not have had that experience, and I might be bragging telling you that, or showing off, or really want to engage and entertain you, with it. But then, the other first times, like uh, again, if you want your love story, you want to go with the first kiss, first heartbreak, first relationship, first trip you took, they took with someone. Granted, if you're ready to hear those things, that might be like, fourth, fifth date that you ask those questions. But when you do want to get back, if you do want to touch into childhood things, first team sport that they played. If you played a team sport, they played a team sport, it might be a different sport. You might have a different experience being on the team. That's right off the bat, vast majority of people have been on a team sport. So that will let you know something about them. Was their mom and dad a coach? Did they like the sport that they played? Did they suck at it? Were they, did they stick with it even though they weren't good at it? Again, that it's key information, and you need to have that information about yourself. So the first, what's your favorite food, instead of asking somebody, dig into, hey, when's the first time you had Mexican food, when's the first time you had Thai food? And that will let you, you can share your experience, you can have that thing in common. But do they enjoy, you also learn, do they enjoy having different types of foods? Is that something that's important to you? So Lucy is the dating coach. She's definitely into like what connects you. For me, I'm in the what story allow me to learn about you, because that's going to connect me to you, because it's going to help me understand you. So even if I don't have it in common, I'm going to appreciate that you shared that with me. That creates a bond and a connection right off the bat. So I'm kind of, I want to learn, you should be very curious about the person that that you're on a date with.
I want to
So,
add to it because you're, yeah, I'm also about connecting, but when you're saying, somebody have tried Chinese food or Mexican food, there's also a story about people who didn't try and why they didn't try and why, and that
exactly.
connects you on a different level too. And maybe you two can go on have a next day on the Mexican food.
Exactly. Share a first time together, or you introduce them to a first time, which is gonna you introduce somebody to a first time experience, you're gonna be forever in their memory banks.
And
And
in their
that's the
stories.
and they're in their stories, and that's the power of first time stories. But if you ask me the question of for and we take it for granted. If you say ask me the question the first time I had Mexican food, I'm from Canada. So if you don't know I'm from Canada, I'm going to start with that, because it's going to explain why it's Taco Tuesday in my new grammar school. And I was like, what is this? Right. So if you've never seen Mexican food and you have your first Taco Tuesday at school, now, and you might have this great memory, or you might be from California or from a different place where you grew up having that food. So it's going to be like, oh, that's so interesting how you never had it. And my first time I had Thai food was in Thailand. And so there's like all these other things where, trust me, when you start asking these questions, having these stories and conversation, it it's going to bring back, it's going to flood all of these memories for you, which is just going to put you in a really great place. And that's another key to when you're on a date, right? You want to be in a positive energy, well-being. And when you're reliving stories that made you happy, that brought good feelings, those good feelings are going to resurface, because that's the power of storytelling. You relive it, it comes back. You're gonna see it, you're gonna taste it. If it's something that's going to make you nervous, your hands are going to get sweaty. Like, you're going to re-feel all of that, which is how the person that you're with is going to also get to feel that. And when you share feelings, you're in business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne. This was very beautiful. Thank you so much coming to the group and sharing your experience about first time stories. As I said, I'm going to put links below the live video so people can connect with you. And is there anything else you would like to add on a final note?
Well, I was going to ask you about what your first mischievous act that you did. Tell us the story.
My mischievous acts were always when I was little. I was probably 8 years old. Me and my brother, we would always climb trees, and in our garden we had this beautiful cherry tree, and we would put the cherries behind the t-shirt to collect them, because we didn't have the bag. So before climbing down of the tree, we would have like a big bellies of cherries. And then my brother said, jump. So I jumped. I jumped down, and all the cherries smashed on my white t-shirt and left like a beautiful mark. And I got in a big trouble because in the time Czech Republic was in a communist country, and clothing was very expensive, and so I got
Oh.
in big girl trouble for ruining the shirt, white shirt. It was white t-shirt. But it is a beautiful memory of me climbing the tree with cherries. I still cherish the memory with my brother. It's one of my favorite memories.
Oh, great.
So
Yeah. So listening to Lucy's story, I'm just gonna put it
okay.
like in practice, right? So you learn, if you didn't know that she was from the Czech Republic, you learn about that. You learn about she was still, it's not what it was not when she grew up, it's not what it is today. So that can raise all kind of question about her childhood, what it was like to be in that type of environment, what the difference are. And she's telling you, like, clothes were more expensive, or she was close to her brother, so it makes you curious, like, oh, did you have other family members, right? So she's dropping in this information that leads to other questions that you can ask to keep the conversation growing. and really get her to express a lot more about, you know, herself and her life, and getting her comfortable because she's revisiting that experience. So she's become comfortable, and that allows her to be more open because she's going back into her memories, and she's going to want to open up if you ask the powerful follow-up questions to that. So thank you for having me. It's been an absolute
Thank
pleasure. I
you.
appreciate the questions from everyone, and I hope they got a lot out of this.
Yes, absolutely. If there's going to be more interest, maybe we can do this again. For now, really appreciate it, Anne, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Take care.